My name's Earl Feldman, and I'm part of our pre-sales consulting team here at CallMiner. And today I wanted to spend a few minutes talking with you about your quality monitoring program, particularly if you're considering a move from a random or manual approach to a more automated approach. And I wanted to share with you my experiences and the pros and cons in each type of approach, and really the benefits of combining the two approaches so that you can really get the most out of your quality monitoring program. So let's start with the fundamental question. What should our quality monitoring program actually be? And it's been my experience that a quality monitoring program should really be made up of two equal parts. The first of which is a measuring stick of how we're doing against certain standards that we've set so that we can actually have a gauge of how we're doing relative to those standards. But equally as important is a driver of desired behaviors within our agent population. Because if we're able to drive the desired behaviors, now we're able to actually have a positive impact on those metrics that matter and move the needle relative to how we're doing from a quality perspective, which should then be reflected in the measuring stick piece. So let's break this down and take a look at both parts of this to be able to get a sense of where we are today and where we may want to go tomorrow by combining these two approaches. So let's start with the manual approach or random approach. As we know, it gives us a good snapshot in time in terms of how we're doing relative to the numbers. But because we're looking at such a small percentage of the overall interactions that each agent or our teams are actually handling, it doesn't necessarily give us the ability to drive desired behaviors where it's needed most. What do I mean by that? So when we're only looking at a small percentage of the overall interactions, what ends up happening is that we go to coach our agents on particular skills that we either want to reinforce because they did them really, really well, or we want to refine because there's a skills gap there that we need to actually improve upon. And what often happens is that we end up with the yeah, but factor. So these coaching sessions take place and we hear back, yeah, but this interaction really isn't indicative of my behavior on all the other interactions that I handle. So, I'm not really going to necessarily take in the coaching as aggressively and eagerly as I might. Or, yeah, but I don't typically handle this type of interaction. And there are a million other yeah buts out there. The problem is that and the challenge it creates is that the coaching impact is diminished. Another challenge associated with a purely random approach is that it's difficult to find subsequent interactions after the coaching has taken place where those skills that you've coached on are required to see if those skills actually stuck and we're actually moving the needle. So now what ends up happening in a purely random approach is that we end up hoping that the interaction that we're monitoring is indicative of the true consistent skill set of that agent. And then we're hoping that the quality agent or the supervisor actually chooses to coach on the skills gaps where it's needed most. And then we're hoping that the skills that we're coaching actually stick with the agent long term. And we're hoping that those revised skills, refined skills actually help move the needle from a measuring stick perspective. Another particular challenge that I've found in running centers for years is that inevitably we end up trying to cram in a number of monitorings at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or whatever the period happens to be so that we're hitting our numbers and we can check the box in terms of, yeah, I completed 4 or 8 or whatever the number is per rep per month or per quarter or whatever it happens to be. But that actually has a negative effect on the coaching oftentimes because we're trying to cram in so much coaching from all the monitorings we're doing in this small condensed period of time that we're not actually over time reinforcing the skills. We're really just trying to hit the number in terms of the number of monitorings that need to take place. So for the reasons I've described and many others, you can see that a purely random approach, while it does have some impact for sure on driving desired behaviors, it's not optimal for driving desired behaviors. And as a result, the QM program often skews towards the measuring stick axis, which means we can see how we're doing, We're not exactly sure how to move the number or how to have a positive impact on driving that number higher. And this is where a 100% or automated quality program can come into play to help augment what you're doing. So in this type of approach, the system is evaluating 100% of all the interactions against the criteria that you've set, and allows you to see patterns of behaviors within your agent populations over time. So now what you're able to see is a particular agent, for example, struggles with a particular skill often. So my coaching is going to focus in that area, and I'm going to be very targeted or very surgical where it's needed most. And by having those interactions, we eliminate a lot of coaching interactions, we eliminate a lot of the yeah, but factor. And we're able to really hone in and enhance the agent's skills where it's needed most, which will drive the metrics that matter over time. It's also much easier when you're having the system evaluate 100% of the interactions to find an interaction that requires those skills after you've coached to them, so that you can see if those skills have stuck with the agent and if they're actually driving the desired behaviors over time that you want to. Moving the metrics that matter in a very targeted way is really at the heart of an automated quality process. But you don't have to make the switch over completely and flip a switch overnight to go from a random approach to a 100% automated approach. What you're able to do is, since the system, the CallMiner system is actually scoring 100% of those interactions, you can leverage the 100% tracking and scoring from a coaching perspective, but you can also continue to do random samples and compare how your QA team is scoring an interaction versus how the system is scoring it, and then tweak over time those categories, those definitions, those standards, until over time you're comfortable with the fact that the system is accurately reflecting the measuring stick piece in the way that you have been doing with your random approach. And then over time, you can move more towards trusting the scores within the system to be able to actually provide both the measuring stick piece as well as the highlighting of the skills gaps so that you can drive the desired behaviors. So what I encourage you to do is give some thought to the combination of the 100% approach augmented with your random approach, and over time, really leveraging the system to be able to not only measure how we're doing, but actually drive desired behaviors that move the metrics that matter. We at CallMiner are happy to have this discussion with you in further depth if you like. Appreciate your attention. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach to us and we'll be happy to have that discussion with you. Thanks and have a great day.